On today's Locked On Mavs, Locked On Jazz crossover, what happened in Game 5? And why does everybody think the series is over? Talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs, Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks and the Utah Jazz. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs and Jazz your first listen every day, or at least one of them. Remember, they're both available and free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can subscribe to the show. And the best way to help us out is to comment anything below. Just comment. Leave a comment. I appreciate all the ones that have gone over to Locked On Jazz and have left comments, especially those that have followed our instructions and have not been mean. Joining me today, the head honcho, my boss, the host of Locked On Jazz, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. What you got for me, David Locke?
I want to congratulate you guys for winning the series. I think it's so great that if you hold home court after 5 games, that the series is completely over. I mean, are you worried? Like, how do you think Mikal Bridges, after his dominating performance beating New Orleans? I mean, clearly Phoenix has now won that series too.
Yeah, Phoenix is right. Mavs Phoenix in round 2 already.
Like, how does Mikal Bridges match up against Luka Doncic? Is that what we're talking about?
I will say that Isaac and I did have a conversation last night. Who does Mikal Bridges guard? Would it be Luka or would it be Brunson? And what would they decide to do? But it was not on the podcast. So, but it does seem like everybody has just called this series as over. I mean, you even on your show, you kind of had like a funeral for your team in a way.
It does feel amongst Jazz fans that you're heading to a funeral on Thursday. I think going down by 33 makes you feel that way. I do think Donovan was in a sense accurate that like they held home court. Like what's now 82% of the teams that win game 5 go on to win. But if you actually look at 4 or 5 series, it's about 55-45 or 60-40. It's hey, you won a game. It's important. But certainly if the Mavericks lose game 6 and the Jazz win game 6, then I think, we'll go to game 7 wondering what happens.
What's the update on Donovan Mitchell? He had the hamstring injury walking out of game 5. That didn't look particularly good. Then Mark Stein said something else about the traps or something else was going on with him. What's the injury report on Mitchell?
So it's I think the story on it is that the hamstring seems to be okay. He did have a
as most hamstrings are, they're just like fine. You pull it and then it's just okay. It's like
I think my guess is he does have a thigh contusion that he got in the series at some point in time. That seems to be, and so did he feel something in his leg? Yes. Is the fear it's a hamstring? Yes. Was it actually maybe something other, is there something wrong with his leg? Yes, probably at this point of a series. He talked with the media today. He said he'll be ready to go. So I think, he's got bruises on both legs. I would guess that most NBA players who are guards read that they have bruises on both legs and are like, yeah, no crap. And anyone who ever played against John Stockton will tell you that they have bruises on both legs after he stuck his knee into your thighs, setting a pick, right? So Donovan is expected to go. He's just had no luck against Dorian Finney-Smith in this series, though. So until he's able to put a stamp on it, but he is the one player on the Jazz roster who can probably have a superstar game. And, I don't know if the Jazz have that in them. And with Finney-Smith being Donovan's 14 of 48 when guarded by Finney-Smith in this series. And it wasn't much better before the series started. So it's going to be awfully hard for Donovan to have a superstar game, but the Jazz need him to probably go drop. If the Jazz are going to win the series, they're going to win it one night by actually shooting it well.
Yeah, at least.
Or the other side, which is the Mavericks do what the Jazz just did, right? Like the Mavericks have had a good shooting night. The Jazz have had a good shooting night. The Jazz have had a bad shooting night. The Mavericks really haven't had the dreadful shooting night yet.
Last game 5, they did not shoot well from 3. I mean, if we're just talking about shooting well from the outside, they didn't. But
I was getting more geeky off of the second spectrum QSQ performance crap that nerds like me here. Let me put on my glasses.
There you go.
Nerd alert. Those are not shady rays, by the way.
I was gonna say Isaac did finally get his shady rays. I know that was a big topic of conversation on our last crossover.
I was so excited because I was gonna tell Isaac that I had been to the Built Bar. I went to the Built Bar factory today.
The Built Bar factory?
Yeah, the real where I
saw
Built Bar.
What does it smell like?
Chocolate.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, it smelled like chocolate. 100% real chocolate. 100% really delicious.
Straight up. What do you think? What do you think Dorian has done well against Donovan Mitchell? Why has it been? Because Donovan Mitchell he's scored points in this series, but he has not been efficient at all in his scoring. What does Dorian do well against Mitchell?
So if we just go to the season, Dorian I think was the 9th best isolation defender in the NBA, and then if you consider the fact that I think according to B-Ball Index, Dorian's number 1 or 2 in the league in guarding the number 1 option on the other team.
He does it the most, yeah.
Right. I think he does it the most of anyone in the league. So, okay, so that's actually way better than 9th in the league. Right? Like you can be the number 1 isolation defender in the league.
Volume.
If you're guarding Isaac Harris the whole time, it's not that hard. Like you're going to come on, if you can't make the show, you get slandered.
That's true, right?
Right. Like, come on, that's not gonna be the last shot. So like being 9th in the league in isolation defense, I would assume he's 1 or 2. Like if you're really judging the and then he's just really long. Donovan's 6'1". So he's long. As Jason Kidd said in a press conference, there's a want to, and I think he moves his feet well. He does seem to, and I'd be really curious. I haven't looked at this number. I'd be curious to know the number on what 3-point shooters shoot when Dorian's the closest defender, because he seems to close out particularly well. Like there's a 3 in the second quarter in which I'm like convinced Bojan's wide open. He sidesteps to avoid Dorian flying by.
I know exactly the play you're talking about. Yep.
Says on the broadcast, like, oh, well, he had to avoid the closeout. Like, I've seen that play, 100 times. Bogey just usually shoots it. And at 6'8", Bogey's shooting window is super high. So he must close out particularly well also.
He does, and it stands out when other players like Spencer Dinwiddie or somebody else closes out, because they just blow by guys, and all of a sudden then it becomes, a wide open 3 is not wide open after they, when they're running through the close, and then they it's almost like they run through first base, right? And then they're off, and then all of a sudden it's a wide open 3 again. Dorian doesn't do that, right? He's able to stop himself at least a little bit. He's able to, at least he jumps to a point where he can contest it possibly again. He does do a good job at that, the timing, and part of it's got to be scheme, right? To know how long it takes for somebody to load up, to be able to get their shot off. Dorian's done an incredible job. I'm excited to see what he does in the rest of this series.
Well, I know you play Phoenix on Saturday. So.
We're getting ready. I'm hoping the Pelicans make one, just get one more win out of it. Give us a game 7 in that series. That'd be fun. We'll see. Big question that I have on this series, and Isaac and I, even after game 3, we did a whole podcast on this. Why has Quin Snyder not gone smaller more? Why have we not seen that with the Paschal, at 5, the not having, one of Gobert and Whiteside out there, the going small? I thought it helped Donovan Mitchell. That's like the one time this season, this series, that he's been really efficient. Why has he not gone to that look more?
So it should help offensively, right? Like it should create space and help offensively. During the regular season, it really impacted them. Actually, they weren't good either offensively or defensively during the regular season. I mean, really, really bad.
Playing small, like
3rd percentile offensively, 2nd percentile defensively. So I think there's no confidence in it. If you look at the wins, the offensive rebounding was really, really vital in both the wins. And now Memphis proved that you could offensive rebound with Brandon Clark as their center. I don't think Eric Paschal can do that same thing. So you give up a lot to it. Offensively, you do open up some space. Maybe they'll do it again. But I'm not sure that you really gain enough. And the second stint of it wasn't very good the other day. It was good for that little run, but then when the second stint, it wasn't nearly as good.
And the one big problem was Luka came back, right? They did it when Luka was out, and then if Luka comes back, all of a sudden, like, you go small with Pascal at the 5, and Luka is bigger than him, right? Like, he's just a huge individual handling the ball, and he takes that. Every time he gets matched up one-on-one with Pascal, you know he just takes it personally. Oh, don't throw this guy at me. Don't throw like this guy. I'm gonna be able to score on him every time. Now he hasn't, but that looked to me, at least, especially in Game 5, when just nothing was going well offensively. I was surprised they didn't go to it at least a little bit more. And Whiteside was not great in that game at all. To at least try that look once or twice, even in like a couple minute stints.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some validity to it. I'm going off the track record that if it had worked a little bit during the regular season, it would feel better. The other one I think is the reason I'm not sure it works long term, and why I think it worked for a little while, not long term. Oh, that's a tease. So we do that as a tease?
Coming up,
why long term it might have a problem as we let Nick Angstadt play Jason Kidd, but not a doctor. Coming up on Locked On Mavericks and Locked On Jazz.
I'm not a doctor, so I don't know.
But before we do that, let me tell you about Bet Online. It's the best place to check out all the live odds and stats and info and everything you need for all these series right now. The Dallas Mavericks are minus 600 favorite against the Utah Jazz. Jazz are a plus 460. So even Vegas doesn't think that this is completely over, right? Because if you look at the Warriors, they play this game tonight. Before you guys have already know what happens with that game, but the Warriors are up 3-1 and they're a minus 15,000 favorite. That's when Vegas thinks the series is over. So
you mean like when the Bucks were minus 20,000 going into tonight's game?
They're also minus 20,000 going into that game for the series, by the way, not even just for the specific game. So if you want to check out that, go check out all kinds of NFL draft stuff. They have NFL draft props. They have specific team props. They have game props for these individual games, NBA specials you can look at, college, MMA. They have all kinds of different sporting events. Kyrie Irving's next team, the Dallas Mavericks, were third on that list, plus 300. That one's wild and got the response of a lot of Mavs fans on Twitter about that one. The
interesting one on the Bet Online odds is I believe the Jazz were like a 5-point favorite at home for Game 3. They're now only a 1-point favorite. And if I remember correctly, the Jazz were a favorite in Game 1.
Yeah.
And then by the time, obviously, Luka was playing by then, but by then we ended up being a underdog for the second one. So Luka's value seems to be about 4 or 5 points.
Which is pretty big. Go check it out. Bet Online, download the app, all that stuff. When Bet Online, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs and Locked On Jazz your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's nightly recaps of every NBA game, MLB, NHL, with analysis from your local experts, free and available wherever you get your podcast, and on Locked On NBA on YouTube. All right, David Locke, pay off the tease.
So let's say the Jazz go small.
Yeah.
Who's the 5 on the floor?
For the Mavericks or the Jazz?
The Jazz.
Pascal or Rudy Gay. They tried Rudy Gay in that last game of the regular season, but he has not played
Let's go Pascal. So who are the other 4?
Then you have Bogey.
Okay.
Either O'Neal or House.
Okay.
Some people want O'Neal to be done from the Jazz I've seen in comments. And then it's you throw out House in there or throw out Clarkson. The guards would be Clarkson, Mitchell, or
all right. So 5 out works particularly well when you have 5 shooters on the floor. Let's assume that it's Donovan, Conley, Clarkson, O'Neal, Bogey, Pascal. Which guys, if the Jazz got which guys are you hugging the 3-point line on?
Bogdanovich a little bit. Clarkson, you just hug everyone on the court because he's the only guy that's able to hit tough shots against them. And then everybody else, you just kind of let. I mean, they've really let Pascal just stand alone in the corner. He's been the Josh Green, right? If you want to say that, like they have just completely left him alone in corners and been like, all right, go ahead, take the shot. We don't care.
Right. So that takes away a lot of the positives to what now Pascal shot it all right during the season. I don't want to diminish that, but I mean,
so did Josh Green. He shot 36% from the field.
But nobody really believes he's a natural 3-point shooter. So one of the things that gets tough there is Pascal did shoot 37%, but I don't think anyone's really buying it. And Royce O'Neal, they've been really willing to leave wide open, and Daniel House is a 35% three-point shooter. Donovan definitely has more driving lanes. Mike definitely would have more driving lanes, and probably you see something of the sort. But it's not the end all the way it's being talked about, because the reason it doesn't work long term is Dallas reacts and says, okay, Maxi Kleber, go get in the middle of the lane the same way the Jazz do with Rudy Gobert and cut off the driving lanes and make Pascal shoot the three. Like, they're going to do the same defense the Jazz are doing. And so, you have to decide that you're willing to run an offense where Daniel House, Royce O'Neal, or Eric Pascal is taking your threes.
Yeah, I thought it would be at least a jump start thing. Quin doesn't seem to want to go small at all. And so it'd be interesting to see if they try it at least, if they get desperate in one of these games, if the offense doesn't work. But according to what you're saying, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen a lot.
Do you have any concern at all? Are you carefree and happy and just no worries at all that the Mavericks are winning this series?
I have way less worries than I did now that they have 2 shots at it and one of them is at home. But I'm still waiting for the Donovan Mitchell game. But Donovan Mitchell's injury, I think, if that's going to be anything, if that injury is anything, then I'm not worried about it. If he's limited at all, then I'm not worried, because that's the only thing. That's the only card left. That's the only real card left, is a really, really good Donovan Mitchell game. And we just haven't seen it and just haven't had it yet.
What about just a really good shooting game?
I think they've run them off the 3-point line enough. Like the Jazz haven't taken more than 35 threes in a game yet. I mean, they averaged 48 threes a game. That's been a huge thing for the Mavs. Just run them off the 3-point line. Don't let them take them. Let Clarkson take all his mid-range stuff. Let Conley take his floaters. Let Mitchell get kind of to the rim. They've just really run them off the line. They haven't, like, the Jazz haven't had a 45 3-point attempt night so that it would hurt them, and it would hurt the Mavs enough if they got really hot.
So the Jazz are 13 of their last 70 for three.
That's not a good number,
13,
right?
13 of their last 65. So if they just regress to the mean of being a 35% three-point shooting team, they would go like 20 of 30.
To regress all the way back, right?
Yeah, in one night.
That takes me to game 5. I wanted to ask you about the game 5 offense, because the Jazz score 77 points. I mean, this was the number 1 offense in the NBA. They score 77 points. And we praised the Mavs defense the show after that. And I heard a bunch of people and a bunch of Mavs fans even be like, well, they just missed a bunch of open shots. Their shot quality was pretty good. They missed a ton of open shots. If you were to give it a percentage in that game 5, what percentage of it was good Mavs defense? What percentage of it was Jazz just missing open shots? Because if those shots are going to stay open, if the game plan stays the same way, then a really hot 3-point shooting night could give the Jazz another win in this.
So I don't know if you recall, but I think in our crossover, I said that I thought one of the bigger factors was going to be fatigue.
Yeah, right. We
were suddenly playing 3 games in 5 nights. I actually think you even referenced it on Locked On Mavericks. I think fatigue hit. It just hit Utah. And I think there's a little bit of something going on here where if you actually were just to say, like, who's more athletic, Reggie Bullock, Royce O'Neal? Reggie Bullock. One was a first-round draft pick. One was undrafted for a reason. Dorian Finney-Smith, I think the Mavericks are more athletic at each position. And so I think maybe there's something where the Jazz just had to exert so much juice to win game 4 because they're just not quite as athletic as they would have been otherwise. And so I think that caused them a problem.
And so you would say that it was more on the Jazz just missing shots or on the Mavs defense?
The Jazz shot quality was the exact same in game 5 that it was in game 3 and game 4. Exact same. So
it's just an all-time cold night. Just one of the.
It was one of the 9 worst shooting nights in the NBA playoffs in the last 6 years.
That's pretty bad.
So I don't want to just. I mean, the Mavericks were the 3rd best team in the league at denying the above the break 3 and the 5th best team at defending it, or vice versa. Dyslexia never killed. It just confuses. But I think that it doesn't really matter. I mean, so the Mavs have been super good at defending that shot. They're the 5th best team. They are the 5th best team at denying the 3rd best team at defending the above the break 3. That's generally thought of as luck, but there's the 5th best at denying, I think, is a super important number. So I think in some level, I would say, I don't want to dismiss Dallas's credit, but I also might say if the Jazz suddenly went 17 of 30, I wouldn't blame the Mavericks either, if that makes sense.
Oh, so now you want to make sure you give the Mavs credit. You don't want to discount the Mavericks now that it's 3-2.
No,
but
my point
before it was like, well, wait for Luka's defense to show up, and then it won't matter because Luka can get hunted, and now it's different.
Luka's defense in game 4 was advantageous to the Jazz.
Well, the game he comes right back from injury,
right.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure I thought Luka's defense was elite in game 5. I don't
know if anyone's making that case.
Right. I mean, truly, if you go, the key stretch of the game, okay, here are the 5 key misses to me of the game. Fast break, Jordan Clarkson brings it up, swings to Donovan Mitchell, wide open left side corner, 3 misses. Early offense, next possession, Donovan over the head, skip pass, Bojan Bogdanovic, far side, wide open 3-point, misses. Next, old man glasses. Next possession.
Here, I'll join you with my blue light blocker.
Next possession, Jazz run a nice play, flip it back out. This is the play we were talking about where Bogey pump fakes, takes a step to his left, Finney Smith flies by. Little of each, right? Let's give some credit.
Yeah.
Next play, Jazz run a nice action. They get good ball movement. Luka drops in the middle lane. Royce O'Neal's wide open top of the circle, misses. Next possession, Jazz push ahead. Luka's being totally lazy. Fine. He just banked in a ridiculous shot on the left side and is admiring himself for it. And he should be because he was freaking great. And he's smiling and giggling, and he's not the complaining Luka. He's the guy that I love to watch because he has such a great time playing the game. And he banks it in off the wrong foot and then it's laughing going back and only got to guard Royce O'Neal, so he decides not to do it. Royce misses a right corner 3.
As one does.
So those are 5 misses where the game went from 8 to 20. They weren't getting a lot of stops. Give Dallas credit. Maybe one of those is defense. So, again, the same way, if 4 of the 5 of those went in, I wouldn't go be blaming Dallas's defense for suddenly being bad at guarding threes.
Coming up, I'm going to tell you why the Dallas Mavericks worked through that issue that the Jazz just went through, that David Locke just laid out, worked through at the beginning of the year, and why it's the reason why they're winning the series right now. We'll talk about that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, there's just so many different types of cars. You look outside and you play the game like red car, blue car. They're all just different types of cars. How could you possibly have all the parts for all those cars everywhere at one store, a physical location? You can't, but Rock Auto does. They have them, and they'll ship them straight to your house. You can put them on. Don't have to worry about the maintenance. I saw a TikTok the other day that showed somebody taking their car to an auto body mechanic, and them they were rude to the person behind the counter, and so the person behind the counter went and grabbed a drill and put like lubricant around the drill bit, put it into their oil can holder, and just went to town on it basically, and it stripped it so much so that they couldn't get it out. If you want to avoid all that, rockauto.com has it for you. You can go get those parts.
Why was that on TikTok?
Just because everything's on TikTok and it's so random. You just never know what you're going to see. The video was somebody that showed that person doing that video, and then it was a couple, they scrolled a couple, and then it was look what someone just did to my car. It was the same person. It was the same car from a different point of view. Anyway, rockauto.com.
Rock Auto, not TikTok. There's the lesson.
Yeah, go to Rock Auto, get your parts, put them on yourself. You know what's going to happen. You know who's handling your car when it's you. RockAuto.com has you covered for all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. It's amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. All right, David Locke. So you're talking about Game 5, those 5 key shots in Game 5 that caused the Jazz. They missed all those shots, and then they caused them to go down, a rabbit trail of despair, basically. This was a massive talking point for Jason Kidd earlier in the year, when the Mavericks would miss all these threes, and then they would hang their heads on the other end, and they would go down to the other end. They wouldn't defend up to their level, and then they would just get beat in some of these games where they wouldn't hit threes. And Jason Kidd kept saying, we can't do this. He said it in the media maybe 4 or 5 times. It was almost like this 2-week stretch where this was his big thing that he was trying to push the team. We got to be resilient. We got to fight more. We can't just, be only hoping that our threes go down, and when they don't, then everything's just gloom and doom. And this team has done that. They have stepped up, and finally we saw in Game 5 they didn't shoot well from 3 and they dominated the game. We just have not seen that from this team very much this year. But they've started to become a more resilient team. They led the NBA in most comeback wins from down 10 plus. They've just been a team that doesn't hang their heads, and it's something that Jason Kidd pushed on a lot at the beginning of the season. And we're seeing from this Jazz team that this Jazz team, when they get down, they go down, right? It's like when any kind of adversity happens in a game, it seems like they shrug and are like, oh, we're just gonna keep trying to do what we're doing. It's not working, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't quite call out 3-2-1 Cancun, and you're hoping that they didn't do that at practice today.
There's direct flights from Salt Lake City, Utah, to Cancun.
We're actually a Delta hub, so we actually have airports. Listen to Big City Nick over here. So I think but I do agree with you that hey, they were by the time you're down 20. Honestly, like, okay, you can fight back. It's for cosmetic purposes for the most part.
I don't know. There's been so many blown leads in the NBA this year, just all over. Not even just these teams, but like the Mavs have come back, I think 3 times from at least 19 or 20 down this year. Like leads are not, especially a first half lead, is not safe in the NBA anymore.
No, and it's as much as we're all like people are like dying on this issue all the time. The fact of it's really obvious why, right? There's 50% of the shots, there's threes, there's more variance to it. Like. This is not a complicated thing. It does seem to be a little bit more than most commentators seem to be able to discuss at any point. I think that there's no question that the Jazz have, I think this is the Jazz dragon to slay, right? A 5-out offensive team. Like if somehow the Jazz got through this series, which seems like a daunting task at this point, but if the Jazz got, through this series in some way, or if they could have, won Game 5, that does feel like that would have been them jumping over this kind of hurdle that's been their bugaboo. And so, if somehow they can get to Game 7 and get there, it's an interesting moment to me if they were to find a way to miraculously win this series at this point. Couldn't they beat Phoenix? Phoenix is pretty darn good, but that's actually a way better matchup to them. Phoenix doesn't have drivers. They don't have a lot of isolation players. DeAndre Ayton's on the floor for all 40 of the 48 minutes, so Rudy Gobert's on the floor. It's actually a way better matchup for the Jazz than Dallas is.
What has disappointed you the most about this team? After that Game 3 loss, it was all about effort, and it was not this team not putting in effort. After Game 5, it was just the missed shots and the hanging the head. But what has disappointed you the most?
So Game 2, I didn't think they played hard. I've said that comment. I don't mean to be overly dramatic about it. I've said that, I hate to say that because it sounds brutal, but I've also said that, if I was standing next to a Jazz player, I think I have enough film I could show them why I'm saying that. The other one that I think is just the reality of who they are, but kind of just bums me out, is the difference in the benches. Jazz bench is sitting there. Mike Conley comes off the bench, and there's not even like a dap the other day. And if you paid $1,000 to sit in the 2 rows behind the Mavericks bench, you're
worst seats in the NBA.
Like you're pissed because you can't see the game.
And one of those people standing up is Boban, and he's like the biggest human.
Right, and Mark Cuban actually has paid for those seats. So he's actually standing in the midst of the players, and then Theo Pinson looks like he bought one of those seats too, and is just wearing regular clothes, but he decided to move into the front of the bench.
Friend of the pod, Theo Pinson. Huh? By the way, friend of the pod, Theo Pinson, but also yes. Boban had teammate of the year stolen from him. Stolen because of ranked voting. They went ranked voting 1st through 5th place. Boban got the most first place votes by like 15. And didn't get enough second place votes and missed out on teammate of the year. Should have been Boban, but this goes to your bench point.
Right. So it's because Boban actually is nice enough to sit most of the time.
By the way, the game in the regular season, it was home for the Mavs when Rudy Gobert was getting the most into it with Luka, and Luka was trying to draw those fouls on him and get him.
Yeah, what's up with the Rudy hate for a guy you so desperately need on your roster?
Not true, but the only player
Not true. You win the title if you have Rudy Gobert.
The only player after that game in the regular season that like dapped up or even acknowledged Rudy Gobert was Boban, who gave him a full-on hug. I was like, Boban's just the best. He's just the best guy.
He is.
Like,
No,
he has no
I mean,
enemies.
I've heard that in the bubble, the Mavericks had more fun than any other team. That's Luka.
Great chemistry.
And so I think there is something to that. Like, and that's who the Jazz were at some point along the way. And like, I get it. Like, Rudy Gay and Hassan Whiteside have done stuff in their career. It's not that exciting for them to be sitting on the bench playing 12 minutes a night, like, or zero. Like, I get that that's what happens at this stage in your career. But when you watch the two of them during the game, it's I think Jazz fans have felt this all series. Like, you'd like to be rooting for the team that looks like they're having a great time, and the Jazz don't look like they're having a great time playing.
Is it, I mean, we've seen the life cycle of a team. It seems like 5 years is the life cycle of a team now. It's much shorter for some of these like star-driven teams that have stars that come together and leave, but it feels like 5 years is sort of the life cycle of a team. They come together, they are ramping up, they get to their peak, and then all of a sudden you have the years of drop off unless somebody leaves. But
yeah, I don't know.
Like
I think what gets super interesting about that is the idea that if that is true, you don't win a title usually until you're 28 or 29 years old. So if that's the way this is going to work, that it's a life cycle of 5 years with a team, then no one's ever winning a title on their first team. Like, if you,
I mean, Giannis just did it, but he was in his second contract.
Right, and he's 28 or 29 years old, isn't he?
I think
like
he's
Kawhi's
27.
Wins it without Tim Duncan. LeBron's 28 or 29 years old when he wins it. Giannis is 28 or 29 years old when he wins it.
It's true. And so you look at that, and you know, Mavs fans that are like, wow, we got to get a title before the end of, it just doesn't happen. Like, it just doesn't, like, as good as Luka is, it just doesn't happen until, you know, it could be like 4 or 5 years from now. But there's a lot of
I think these are two pretty good franchises, the Dallas Mavericks and the Utah Jazz. I think if you've been a fan of these two franchises, you've had an awful lot of great stuff. Like, the two of them have combined for 4 trips to the Western Conference Finals since 2000. You've got 2, we've got 1?
Yeah,
or 3 of them?
Yeah, the Mavs had 3. Yeah.
So you've had 3, we've had 1 since 2000. You can take it back to 97. Like, that's 22 years, 2 really good franchises, 4 trips to the Western Conference Finals.
The West, like, man. The West has been,
right?
Been brutal.
I mean, I think I'm curious to watch, having lived it now, right? We're on the I'm curious to watch Minnesota now. I'm curious to watch Memphis now. I'm curious to watch, like, when does the Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson can't play together? Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns can't play together. I mean, the one thing on Dallas that's nice is Luka's such a dominating force, and frankly is such an incredible usage rate that I don't think a second player is going to actually want it. Like, no second star is going to want to play with Luka, as great as he might be, because you don't want to. He's got a 35% usage rate. Like, you're not gonna see the ball enough.
Well, and now they're going to re-sign Brunson, and he's sort of going to be that guy. So now it's find another star that's not just a scorer, right? It's find another guy that does.
Well, it was Rudy Gobert till your fans alienated him forever. So
you think so? You think he's done? He was goading the crowd on. He was like, "Come on, bring it."
Yeah, no, offend Rudy. He's French. He never forgets.
You know, a hated player has never gone and joined a team before, right? I'm old enough to remember the Matt Barnes, Kobe Bryant.
You think they can get over these things?
I think it could work.
Yeah, that's all right. Your fan base just getting cocky, feeling good about themselves, and you know, your perfect piece to the puzzle, alienating. We'll keep him. That's fine. I love him.
I don't know if fans are getting cocky because the Mavs were up 3-2 last year. I mean, we're still holding on until it happens, I think.
So, I mean, it's just interesting. I think, you know, obviously the Jazz, I always think it's curious. Jeff Van Gundy, everyone's, you got to blow it up. And maybe the Jazz will make dramatic changes. Like, I don't know, like, blow it up for what? Like,
does Jeff Van Gundy want everybody to blow it up so he can go coach the team?
Van Gundy's point was like, what are you blowing it up for?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's like, what? Like, you know, like blow it up for what? Like, to get what? To do what? Like, no one ever has that. Like, it's this, let's blow it up. You got to blow it up. Like, really? How about reform? Like, maybe remodel. Like, we'll blow it up. Because there's a lot of places to be in this league. And you take my point is you take franchises that are as good as Dallas and Utah, and you look at how rarely they've gotten to the second round and how super rarely they've gotten to the conference finals. Like, there's not a path that gets you back to where you are right now.
Well, the Thunder are trying that right now. They went from Paul George and Westbrook to, I mean, just nothing.
Tell me when that's ever worked.
No. I mean, you can
and
try.
Here's the other part of it. That's tell me the last two times, or tell me the last time that two young stars have risen together in the league. Should have used this pre-Easter. Have risen together in the league and not had chemistry problems.
Oh yeah, you start looking at some of them. It's like it's Westbrook and Durant. It's Harden and everyone. It's LeBron and I guess Kyrie maybe. It's like it's almost as if you start trying to force guys together.
Right, like Houston and Oklahoma City are doing this thing where they're going to have a million draft picks.
Well, it's the Warriors guys.
Young players all together, and they're going to rise up together. Except for the fact in this league, like there is, I don't want to say who, but there's a player in this league who demanded to be traded because another player on their team got their bobblehead doll first.
Well, the answers are Warriors, Bucks with Middleton and Giannis, if you want to count Middleton as a star, and then I guess Jokic and Murray.
Now, let's see if Jokic. Let's see, right, Jokic and Murray, who have won a playoff series, or two.
They made a conference finals, right?
I thought they lost to get in that conference finals, but maybe not. Did they make the conference finals that year?
It's almost.
They beat the Clippers. In the bubble, they made the conference finals, lost to the Lakers because the Clippers self-destructed.
So if you count the bubble.
Yeah, the bubble can count except for the fact the Lakers did well. I mean, it's, no, but I mean, I think it's like, yeah, so let's see. Jamal Murray and Jokic might be able to pull it off.
Yep.
But you go back, Kobe, Shaq, right? Kobe,
yep.
Penny, Shaq. Like, it doesn't, like Middleton, Giannis is an interesting one. I guess they rose up together, but it was pretty clear definition of who was one, right? There wasn't a lot of question mark on who's one in that group. So it's interesting. Like, it's a very, when you see Houston and Oklahoma City and all these people compile all their draft picks and we're going to blow it up, we're going to get all these picks and we're going to build it back up. Like, that script does not yield stuff very well. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons did not work out very well together. Right?
No. I mean, Luka and Porzingis, that was the one that they tried to put together, and that one, Mavs just went through that.
There was a little bit of a fight of who won was, right?
Well, there was.
Shouldn't have been, but there was.
I was saying, I don't know how much of a fight it was, but there was.
One of the players was good and one of the players isn't. It's like, wow, how'd the Mavericks get better? They traded for two good players for one bad player, and they got better. Like, oh, funny how that works.
Right.
Okay, there you go. I'm off my soapbox.
There it is. That's the last crossover. I mean, even if the series ends in 6 or 7, this is the last crossover we'll do.
Yeah, because we're not doing one. Because Friday we're recapping, right?
Yep. And then it's over.
Saturday we're playing Game 7.
So whether you have, I would enjoy going to a Game 7, but professionally I would I'd rather just get done at 6.
Calling Game 7 would be great. I called Game 7 Jazz Clippers, and it was pretty great. I called Game 7 in the bubble. It didn't have the same feel because I wasn't in the bubble. But I called Game 7 of Jazz Clippers first round, and the Jazz beat the Clippers, and you knew the Jazz were going to beat the Clippers when Austin Rivers waved off Chris Paul in that game. And you knew that they had chemistry problems that were going to be deep and thorough.
Oh, Austin Rivers. There it is. Whether you have enjoyed these crossovers or not, this has been Locked On Mavs.
Isaac Harris. Really cheap of you to duck out.
Yeah. Right when things are going well, he leaves and goes on a forced vacation. Thanks for making us your first or second listen of the day.
Enjoy your nice city, Isaac.
Make your second listen Locked On NBA tonight. Tony East, Pat the Designer taking over for you. Have great stuff for you every single day, Monday through Friday at 30 minutes, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs Jazz. Peace out. Boom.